Only you, Tonto, know I'm alive. To the world, I'll be buried here, beside my brother and my friends, forever.
You all alone now, last man. You are a Lone Ranger.
Yes, Tonto, I am a Lone Ranger.
Hi there, welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops, and I am driving in the car with a living legend of photojournalism in the United States and around the world, and a lot of his work is probably in your memory as part of our history. Wait a minute, I gotta put on a seatbelt. This is the good way to do it. Anyways,
you know, I'll just say one thing, we legends always buckle up.
Yeah, and us unknowns, we just cast it off to the wind. But anyway, this is the great David Burnett. He's been so kind to come down or up and join us up here in northern Michigan for my Photostock event, and he has been a gem. Last night, and his wife should turn off the audio right now, he did a presentation that was 4 hours long, and it was nothing short of amazing. I think that everybody really had a good time. I mean, it was awesome. So anyway, without further ado, I'm driving along here with the great David Burnett. So welcome, David.
Thank you.
Welcome to northern Michigan.
Happy to be riding along here, and I have to say, I've been to the UP before, but I don't think I've ever been into the northern part of the LP.
Yeah,
and
us trolls.
But it's what keeps flashing in my mind are all those TV ads for Michigan tourism, and I'm thinking, wow, they're not far wrong.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah.
It's beautiful up here. It's pretty interesting.
It is a really beautiful place,
yeah.
And I'm so lucky to be able to live here now and enjoy it. Aside from the winters, they get a little bit dicey at times, but
yeah, but unless you're living in Florida or
right.
Texas, the
right.
winters are always going to be a little bit wintry.
I am starting to think about taking off for the month of February if I could. You know, that seems to be the worst one. But anyway, so yeah, it's so good to have you up here in our tiny little town of Cross Village, and you've been so gracious with your time this time, and I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. You know, when we had our breakfast the other day, that's kind of what keeps going through my mind, is all the stories you were talking about, and the people you were talking about that you've had those connections with. You know,
I know that I've been doing this a very long time, and although I can't, as I said last night, I can't really believe that I'm someone who's old enough to talk about something that happened 50 or 55 years ago.
Yeah.
When I look at the calendar, there's no getting around it. But so far, I'm keeping my health as long as I can. I've got a camera on my shoulder, and it's a world, as I've discovered here with all the new people I met this week. The photo world, or worlds, since it is a lot of different things, is always interesting. And I know I have friends who aren't photographers, like my brother, who would tend to say, well, photographers are so boring, or all you do is think about yourself, or you think about the last thing you saw or looked at. And
Really?
it's like, yeah, we can be guilty of that. Now, I mean,
I've not heard that one.
Where you can be a little bit guilty of wanting to share before you get a print, or before it's online, or before it goes somewhere else, just what the experience was. But on the other hand, one of the reasons we all are still, not became photographers, but that we're still photographers, or we're still photographers, is that we have a great joy in the mere act of looking and seeing.
Yeah.
And great joy comes from that. Even if a picture sucks, you might have seen something really cool. So.
Well, and I don't know, that's how I see things. I've always been real visual, and so, even when I'm not with a camera, or even not even thinking about the fact that I like to make photographs, I'm always framing and composing and looking at things and thinking, I don't know if everybody does think in that way, but
I can't go to a Broadway show without imagining myself on sort of a skyhook that could be anywhere you want it to be, and where would I want to float 8 feet or 10 feet higher and shoot with an 85, like, a show that may not even be that interesting, but I'm just looking at it with that visual sort of mental cropping going on all the time.
Exactly, that's the same I am. I'm always putting frames around things in my mind, and sometimes they'll strike me, it's like, oh my God, you know, I mean, why don't I have a camera in my car? I guess we do now with the phone, but it doesn't really seem to be as satisfying to make that picture.
I can't remember who it was, but I've kind of stolen their line, and I would credit them if I could actually remember, but it was some more senior photographer to me, I think, who talked about how all you ever really own as a photographer are the edges of your frame, and where you place them is what you are about.
Wow.
And that you would probably do it different than every other person, you know, and each of those people would have a slightly different take on it. And then of course all of that gets disrupted when the 1973 United Press International picture editor says, oh, for Christ's sake, just crop it, it just ought to look like this, which is kind of what a lot of people in journalism ended up, you know, people that started at the wire services or for a daily paper, I'm sure there was a lot going on. I did once work with a guy at a sports magazine who talked about, well, we get the pictures in and then we can crop them and go to press. And I'm thinking, like, why do you think that cropping them is an inherent part of the
whole
subjectivity
process.
You know, it's like, okay, everybody wants to add their 2 cents worth.
Right, why can't the photographer make that choice?
But just to assume that cropping is required, that would seem to me a little bit dismissive of what we do.
So, I mean...
A press badge. I knew you were a reporter. You had that dumb look.
You know, I noticed through your talk and things, you know, you have kind of a love-hate relationship with your editors and things. I mean,
actually, it's mostly, I would say, mostly love. It's the hate part is only the 28-year-olds who have never heard of me and don't care to know anybody that they don't already know.
Right, and that does seem to me, not to be ageist here, that does seem to be kind of a trend these days. You were talking about how nobody likes to talk on the telephone anymore, how you have to schedule a phone call. It's like,
scheduling
isn't
a phone
that what
call.
a phone is for?
Scheduling a phone call.
I loved it. That was hilarious.
Pick up the goddamn phone.
yeah.
Pick up the phone. That's why it's called a telephone.
You know, I guess I don't mean a love-hate relationship, but just that you know, I mean, there's editors that edit writers. My wife is a writer, and you know, you're always getting your words edited, I suppose, and I guess it's the same thing, but having not been part of that experience, it always seems to be something that should be left up to the viewer, really.
Well, I don't know, I inherently don't feel like I shouldn't be edited, because any number of times that I've been either out working with a writer or my work gets brought back to headquarters, whether it's Time Magazine or my office, and I would say I've had far more good experiences than I've had bad ones. That I've had photographs that were kind of lost on a contact sheet that somebody discovered and cropped out a little bit and said, well, what about that? And that ended up being something that was very well done and later on well received. So I'm not that picky about it, and I'm not so convinced that I always know right off the bat that it can only be my way, because I've had too many experiences with good editors, and both assigning editors and actual people who get the cropping L's out and start cropping.
Right. The cropping L's. I'm all set once again.
That's my GoPro.
Yeah, there's your GoPro. Are you recording
his GoPro. That's cool. Him. That's me. We're out in the boonies and we're taking a ride.
We're taking a ride. I'm taking it.
You know, you gotta press the goddamn button for it to work. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do that. All right. Okay, I can't figure out. Oh. God damn it.
You know, you gotta press the goddamn button for it.
Well, let's see, Burnett, there's a reason that you're not personally being too famous with this stuff.
Yeah, we are up here in the boonies, but not really that much in the boonies. You know, it's one of those places where people have been coming for 100 years for their vacations.
On the other hand, the brewery closes at 8 o'clock.
Oh yeah, so
even on a Friday.
We're gonna have to get some beer in you.
That's a very un-Michigan thing.
Yeah.
You know, last night when you were getting into your whole talk and you were talking about the way that you got into photography, that seems to be kind of a common thread with a lot of us that have been in it since we were a child, is that idea of seeing things come up in the
Well, I think it was accidental, more or less, for a lot of people, because it was just a way to do something when you were not really doing anything.
Right.
And so it made sense to try and sign up for, you know, the yearbook or the newspaper
or something like that. Yeah, I get it.
And there were enough good teachers out there who, you know, oh, I'll take the yearbook photo team.
Yeah.
You know, he was a math professor and a really big guy. He was a big guy, and his breathing was always a little labored. And when you would see him working on a print in the darkroom, you could also hear, because you're in this little space, you could really hear him breathing.
Yeah.
These kind of slightly raspy breaths.
Yeah.
So you could tell that it really, even though it was a picture of the French Club or something,
right,
he was making it work as much as you could make anything work for the French Club.
Yeah. It's amazing. So, but anyway, I was going to try to attach that to what you were talking about. You know, honestly, by the time I knew a lot of your images, but I forgot about Mary Decker.
Yeah.
You know, and that image was really important, especially on me. Wow. It's just really so powerful. You know, millions of people, like you say that. So I was thinking of the analogy between that and something coming up in the tray. You know, I mean, you don't know what's really going to come up, but you sit there and you watch it coming up in the tray. But here you are, you've done this and you've experienced this event, and then you send your film off, and your first view of it is in a national magazine. That's just got to be mind-blowing.
Well, I mean, and that got to be standard procedure, because I mean, I can't think of any time that I happened to be in New York. One time I flew the Concorde was at when Poland declared martial law in December of 1981.
Yeah.
And it was the year of solidarity, and they were doing Lech Walesa. Time magazine was doing Lech Walesa as Man of the Year, and so there was an Austrian guy that lived in Italy and did a lot of work for Time, and he was a really good schmoozer and always had visas to be able to get into Eastern Bloc countries, which in '81 were not easy to get. You had to really work a little bit to get it.
Right.
And then I was in. So I actually had to wait like 10 days, first in Washington and then in Paris, to get my visa. And I finally, after days of like trying to push the Polish embassy, they gave me my visa on a Thursday afternoon instead of Friday morning, and it saved me a day of getting in there. So I actually was able to.
So you took the Concorde not as part of a story, you wanted to get over there as fast as possible.
No, I mean, I was assigned by Time. They were going to do Walesa as the Man of the Year.
Right.
We're going to do all this stuff about Poland. And one of the Polish-born correspondents, he lived in Washington basically his whole life, but he spoke Polish and had come over when he was maybe 5 years old at the time of World War II. And so he was kind of leading the coverage. And I got there Friday. Friday night, I kind of got settled. Saturday, he said, look, Walensa's speaking in Gdansk tonight at a meeting, and I think we have a photographer there. So I'm going to drop you at my cousin, who's a farmer, and just in the middle of a Polish winter, and just make some pictures there, and then you can get a taxi tonight back to Warsaw, and then we'll all hook up on Sunday. I hung out for a couple hours, and I get in this cab, and I'm driving like 2 hours or so back to Warsaw, and it starts to be real snowy and icky weather. And as we're driving, we start passing all these military trucks and tanks, and tanks that are up on trucks, and troop carriers and stuff. I thought, man, that's a lot of military stuff, but hey, it's the Eastern Bloc. It's what they do.
That's what, yeah.
So I get back about 10 o'clock. I go to and because things were tough in Poland, there was not enough food, there wasn't enough food to go around, it was hard to find, and I go to the restaurant of the Intercon Hotel, which should be the one place you can get a bite to eat.
Right.
And yeah, well, we don't, you know, Nemo, we don't have it, no food. And I see a bunch of reporters kind of sitting around just finishing their dinner, and I'm kind of really pissed off that I have missed dinner, damn it. And it's been a long day, and all you can do is go to the dollar store down the lobby and buy some milk chocolate or something, which you don't want to overdo that.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in a not very good mood, and I go up about 11:30 and I call my friend Ruth Gruber, who was a UPI correspondent who I'd spent a lot of time working with, and no, for UPI, but we were covering a lot of the same stuff in Yugoslavia a few years before. And we're talking, and she's got a few suggestions. And then at midnight, the phone dies. And I try and call her back. I can't get a line. I say, okay, the hell with it. You know, it's Poland. I'm assuming that there are phone problems from time to time. And go to bed, and I wake up about 8 o'clock, and it feels a little weird. I go downstairs, and this very tall, weirdly coiffed Danish radio correspondent is running around the lobby yelling, "The army has invaded Solidarność! The army has invaded Solidarność!" And it was the night that at midnight everything had been cut.
Wow.
And the army was taking over, and they were going to get rid of Valensa, and he was taken into custody up in Gdansk. Now, I had not gone up there and seen it, but the writer I was with had been in the room, and they all saw Valensa for the last time. And this French photographer shooting for Sigma Agency, an old, longtime friend of mine named Henri Bureau, made basically the last good pictures of Valensa, and then as he walked out of the room, 10 minutes later he was arrested.
Wow.
And so Henri basically bought a summer house with the money that he made on those pictures.
Really?
It was like a couple of $100,000.
Wow.
Because it was a big, big deal. I mean, it was still in 81, you know, they had not, the Iron Curtain had not fallen yet. This was like
right.
a tiny, Solidarity was kind of a tiny crack, but only a tiny one. And so we're like, what in the hell, what do we do, where do we go? And I went off and photographed some stuff. Very cold, wintry day in early December. And I went to the big cathedral, and I shot this beautiful, amazing light coming in through the stained glass and arriving on the faces of these very long, sad faces of people in the second floor sort of balcony of this church. And, you know, shooting Kodachrome 64, that was the magic
That was the thing,
time.
yeah. You know, it's just got to have been so, I've been to a couple of things that are historic events, but for you that, you know, did you ever get into that whole adrenaline rush part of it?
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, so that was Sunday, and went back to the church that night, and that picture of the two people with the little candles and everybody out in the street, that was that evening. And, you know, but it was hard to make pictures that really got beyond the very basics of what the, you know, which really was interesting, the population, but, you know, pictures of the military, that was tough. So I'm driving with my friend Chris, who's a Polish photographer. He was shooting for Newsweek. So it was like all the time I would be working for Time and running around with the Newsweek photographer.
Yeah.
And we didn't give a shit because we knew our pictures would be different, and we were there to kind of watch each other's back more than anybody else would. And we drive by the theater that is on the marquee. It's in Polish, it's Apocalypse Now.
Oh, really? Wow.
And there were like 5 armored cars with troops right in the front of that building. I thought, okay, Chris, we got to find a place to shoot this.
Yeah.
So we went like half a block down. Across the street was an apartment building, and like 4 or 5 floors. Walk up, and we walk into we park around the back. We walk into the building. We walk up. We walk up. We walk up, and we look out the little window of where the stairs would break. You know, they come down half a flight and then half a flight.
Yeah.
And in the middle there was a little set of windows, and amazingly, the windows opened, and we're like, okay, let's just shoot a few and get the heck out of here. And I can remember walking down those stairs after we'd shot the pictures, kind of knowing we had been spotted by some guy in that group of soldiers. And we weren't, but I was convinced we had been. My heart was pumping like I don't think I ever have remembered my heart racing along.
I was going to come right out of your chest.
I was scared shitless, and you know, stuffed the film in my pant pocket. We got back in the car and drove away, and you know, it ran in Time the next week as a little picture. And of course, it's never as exciting as the moment that you shot it. It's basically, oh yeah, it says apocalypse, and yeah, it is the apocalypse because they've just
and to have that and to be able to
law.
Date it with that as well. And
so, but it was a great point picture to have. It was a picture that said something. And every morning the honor guard, to honor the World War II dead, these 8 or 10 guys would do their goose-stepping march, and the official change of guard, I think it happened at noon.
Yeah. And
I went down and I shot that, and you've got all these goose-stepping soldiers doing their official thing. That was a pretty good picture. And you're just trying to figure out, how can I build a story out of this? And it wasn't that obvious. And we went back then Sunday night to the hotel, and Henri had come from Gdansk, and it said, look, I'm taking the train out tonight. They said, would you take my cameras back for me? I don't want to travel with my cameras. I said, well, if you'll take my film, I'll bring your cameras.
Yeah.
So we did this whole thing. He said, I don't know how I'm going to get my film out, but tell me what you think. It's like, here's my bag, my winter boots, my coat. And I looked through everything. I looked and put my hand in the boots, and I'll never forget. He said, "Ça m'intéresse que tu dis là." You know, I'm interested by what you say, because let me show you something. And then he pulls the floor mat up of his boots, and all of his film is tucked away in the bottom of his
boots. He's got wow.
And so we ended up putting my film in with his, and I ended up taking my big bag of cameras and his big bag of cameras. We put him on the midnight train to Berlin. That's, I think, Sunday night he went. And then Sunday morning or Monday morning he got to Berlin, and he got to the airport, and he flew to Paris, and by 6 o'clock he had the cover of Perry Match and everything else. And my film was then picked up and sent to New York.
This is like the stuff of movies and dreams. I mean, young people, like young photojournalists that shot things, you know, grip and grins all the time and stuff. This was the thing of dreams. Hey, look what we're gonna do here.
Okay.
Let me put it into my sport mode here, and we'll get.
Well, we are sports, if nothing else.
And speaking of sports, get off on that a little bit. Like you were talking before about photography being one of those things where everybody sees it in a different way, and
it's real easy to go where everybody else is.
Yeah, but the thing that I was gonna, my point was, is that here you are in sports, and you're lined up along the whatever, the sideline or the track line, you know, and there's, you know, 40, 50 other photographers making images, and yet, you know, There's only one of those that's going to get the shot.
You know, it is amazing that you can have that many people clustered together, and there'll be like 1 or 2 great pictures come out of it. And everybody else will have something that's maybe okay, or pretty good. Or what's really interesting about the Mary Decker picture is that I recall, and I may have this wrong, but I recall that there were 2 other photographers on that bench, one of whom I'm still kind of, you know, distantly in touch with. I haven't really seen him for forever, but it's, you know, it's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And 39 years. But he was working for the Long Beach paper, shooting Tri-X at 1,000th of a second, and he has it so sharp, the falling. He doesn't really have the moment on the ground like I do.
Yeah. Oh, and the thing that you did with with her look in that face is amazing.
No, and that really turned out to be the picture. And if you saw it on TV, you wouldn't even know that moment was a picture.
No, that's the beauty of still
photography.
photography.
You know, it's just like this. It's like, and you know, about 5-6 years ago, maybe a little longer, I got an email saying, I am a sports medicine person. I work at this thing in Oakland, and for many years I've had this, what is now a kind of tattered piece of a magazine clipping in a frame in my living room, and it's kind of getting to where I can barely see what it is anymore. I'm the nurse in the Mary Decker picture.
The woman that was with her there.
And you don't even see her.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, you see it, and she's part of the formation of the
I have to say that looking at the photograph the other night in your presentation, I was really looking at that photograph, unlike, you know, in a different way. The emotion was gone from that period. So I did see her, and I thought, wow, I don't even remember her being in that photograph.
I wouldn't even have been able to tell you that there was, had I not have her in my picture.
Yeah.
And I guess she had like an old clip from Time magazine or something, and it was kind of fading away.
It's hard to believe that it's that long ago. When I I looked it up when I got home.
40 years next year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
just.
Well, I wrote her back and I said, you wrote the right guy.
Yeah.
And I sent her a 2024 print.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean,
what was it shot on? Was that an Ektachrome?
Fuji 100.
100.
And that's the whole story about how Fuji destroyed Kodak that was where Fuji made the inroads
into the
no one had ever shot Fuji. Some dipstick at Kodak in about 1980 or 81. Oh, do we have to move that?
No, I'm not going to do that. I thought you could see the house from here, so I'll just back up. No, go ahead. Some dipstick from Kodak says, they ask us if we want to be the official film of the 84 Olympics. Well, what does that mean anyway? Everybody knows we're Kodak. And like, we don't have to be the official nothing. So Fuji said, Haidomo, we'll take that. And Fuji they were the one that had the lab right there. Their lab was right in the press center. So they ran everybody's,
and so all the E6, Kodak, and I was still shooting Kodachrome, but you had to go like 1.5 miles to the off-campus place, and you know, you'd get some 20-year-old kid to run the film back and forth, but it still took you half a day or an overnight to get the Kodachrome.
Right.
And the Fuji you'd get in an hour. And they just, that was when everybody discovered, wow, this Fuji 100 stuff is really good.
Yeah.
And I shot that at 250 at 2.8 at Fuji 100 push a stop. And the color was really beautiful.
Yeah, that was gorgeous.
I mean, you know, for like a sports picture, sometimes the technical side of, you know, the film thing works, sometimes it doesn't, and that one it really did work. And I thought, man, I'm never going to shoot another roll of Ektachrome. That crap is pretty bad to start with.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's terrible. So let's do something else, you know. Let's try the 100, and then Belvia. Once Belvia
see that house in there?
Oh, look at that! Wow.
And it's like, this is the road you would have had to come in on, you know. So whoever built this place.
Wow.
And I've had the drone up over this, and you can see the full 80 acres or whatever it is.
It's a pretty big house, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you can see there's also next to it a massive barn that collapsed. But anyway, you can see that.
Could your drone go that far and still be in touch?
Oh yeah, Yeah. I've flown around it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, it's
because is that a quarter mile? Do you think?
Easy a quarter mile. Yeah. I've been out there several times. I only discovered it the other day since I got this car.
Is this new?
This is new, relatively new. Yeah, for me. Yeah.
3,000 miles. Yeah.
I'm gonna.
You know, when you're taking a 45-year-old lens and putting it on a 45-day-old camera, it's
a little bit extra weight for it that it's probably not used to. Do you have a sponsorship with Sony?
Well, I have. Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the artisans of imagery, which I think they're now just calling ambassadors again. But I gotta say, they are fan-fricking-tastic.
Yeah, they're good.
You know, I started shooting Canons in '78. I changed from Nikon to Canon in the fall of '78. Shot the entire Iranian Revolution with 2 AE1s.
Wow.
And a bunch of Kodachrome. And it's going to be really weird, but it's just, wow, it's on there. Great, thank you.
Cool, you all good? I'm amazed that I was able to help out with that. So.
Thank you.
Good.
Danielle, can you scoot a little bit that way? Just kind of tuck in here just a little. All right. And you two guys, blue and multicolored, scooch in here a little bit.
That would be my terms. Blue and flowers.
The gentleman in the back.
How cool is this? For the last part of the video, we've got the great David Burnett up on a ladder taking our group picture. So this is pretty cool.
No, you guys can get up in front of me a little bit.
Sue, you guys coming over?
Raise your hand. Not you. No, not you. You're good. But the guy behind you. Oh, what's that? Fine. Now, I can't remember anybody's name, so. You were awful hot there.
I'll sit up so you can fit in. Now, you realize we gotta all get up.